Wrong woman, wrong target, wrong era to mess with her. Hey, beautiful, you shouldn't be running alone out here. The voice sliced through the quiet of dawn like a blade. Raina Cole didn't break stride. At 6:30 a.m., Ironvale Park was hers, or at least it used to be. This morning felt different. Her pulse steadied. Not from exertion, but from instinct. Her platinum blonde hair caught the early light. Every step a metronome of control. What that voice didn't know was that beneath her runner's jacket was a body built to survive ambushes and end them in places far more lethal than a quiet, suburban trail. She slowed. Breath still calm. Eyes scanning, calculating. Then she saw him. A tall figure emerged from behind a weathered oak, his shadow spilling across the gravel. Tank Calderon. The smirk on his face didn't touch his eyes. "We just want to have some fun," he sneered, gaze crawling across her like a claim. Behind her, footsteps thickened. Zeke, Mason, and Trey closing in, their movements synchronized like a net being pulled tight. But before we talk about the 12 seconds that followed, before you see what these men would never forget, you need to understand who Raina Cole really was. Raina wasn't just another runner with a smartwatch and a caffeine addiction. She was 41, on paper, a security consultant, lived alone in Quincy Heights, kept to herself, attended the occasional corporate retreat. But under that calm exterior was a different truth forged years ago in the silence between gunfire. She had served with Shadow Company, a unit so far off book it wasn't even whispered at the Pentagon. No insignia, no record, just results. And ghosts. This morning's loop followed her usual route, 5 miles of muscle memory. Northern Trail, narrow, quiet. Fewer cameras. She liked the solitude, the meditative rhythm of her stride. Left, right, left. Right, the cadence that helped drown out everything else. What she didn't see yet was the black SUV parked by the service gate. Windows tinted. Idle engine. No motion. Inside. Tank Calderon sat behind the wheel, watching her through the glass. Same route, same time. "She's alone," whispered Zeke from the passenger seat, all nervous energy and bad impulse. In the back, Mason and Trey brothers built like failed linebackers cracked their knuckles, hungry for something they didn't understand. Tank's tone was bored. "Rich lady in fancy gear thinks this park's hers." He shifted into drive. Time to remind her it isn't. Raina rounded the bend by the old reservoir, her favorite stretch. The trees closed in, the trail tightened, and the air changed. Quieter. Still. She glanced at her watch. 6:47 a.m., right on time. Then came the footsteps, heavy, purposeful. Too many. She angled her gaze toward the puddle just ahead. 4 shadows. Closing. That voice echoed again in her mind, not fresh, but faded like a memory with teeth. That voice still echoed like a bad dream she hadn't earned. But this time, she wasn't freezing. She was calculating. She stopped. Not because she was afraid, but because it was time. "I don't want any trouble," Raina said. Her voice steady but just shaky enough to sound convincing. "I'm just trying to get my workout in." Tank laughed, a slow, dry sound with no trace of humor. "Oh, you're gonna get a workout, sweetheart, just not the kind you were expecting." But while he grinned, Raina Cole had already entered a different state of mind. A place she hadn't gone in over 2 years. Tactical clarity, shadow mode, every angle, every face, every threat assessed and filed in milliseconds. Tank 6'2", 220 pounds, brute force, but slow-footed. The twins behind her, Mason and Trey Calderon, looked bigger, but sloppier, relying on size over skill. The skinny one, Zeke, fidgeted like he needed a fix. He'd be the weak link. "Look," Raina said, reaching slowly toward the pouch on her belt. "I have cash, cards, take it all. We're not just here for your wallet. Lady, Trey muttered behind her. His voice was thick with ugly intent. And there it was. That chill, not fear, but something colder, sharper, the same internal click she'd felt in Narva province, when her team was surrounded in a canyon that wasn't supposed to be hostile. That same stillness when time slowed and everything narrowed into angles and exit points. Her heart rate dropped. Vision crystallized. "Please," she said quietly, taking a calculated half-step back toward the twins. "I have a daughter. She needs me to come home." A lie, but a useful one. Tank hesitated. His smirk twitched. Zeke's shoulders tensed. Not full sociopaths. She noted. That mattered. "Should have thought about that before flaunting yourself in our space." Tank growled, but his tone had softened. Just barely. Raina took one more step. Now she had what she needed: proximity, leverage, timing. She was within striking range of the muscle, but far enough from the blade. "Last chance," Tank said, pulling a knife from his jacket. "Do this easy, or we do it hard." Raina looked at the blade, then up at his face, and when she spoke again, her voice was different. The tremor was gone, replaced by steel. "You know what your problem is," she said. Tank blinked, caught off guard by the shift. "You made 3 assumptions." Her tone was flat, icy, unflinching. 3 tours in Narva province, Bronze Valor Cross, Phantom Commendation, expert in close-quarter combat. Raina knelt beside Tank, still gripping his knife. Her voice was cold, like she was reciting a report, not her past. "I've dragged men through minefields, patched them under fire, and buried too many to count. You 4 jackals thought you could corner me in a city park." Tank's smirk had evaporated. What stared back now was real fear. The zip ties clicked tight. Mason coughed blood on the ground. Trey was unconscious. Zeke curled beside a tree, whispering apologies no one asked for. Raina moved like muscle memory, tactical, precise. 6 months ago, she'd told herself she was done with this life. Now, not even close. Officially. She'd retired from Shadow Company, a ghost unit no longer acknowledged by anyone who mattered. Unofficially, they cut her loose after Ember Lance. That mission was supposed to be clean extract and informant from a cleared zone. But it wasn't cleared. 12 hostiles, 1 survivor, her. The trap cost her entire team. The Army blamed a briefing error. She called it betrayal. She traced the leaks, found one name, Lucien Calderon, a contractor with access and no conscience. She reported it. They shut her down, stripped her clearance, and buried the whole damn thing, so Raina Cole Shadow 6 became just another jogger. Until this morning. Tank wheezed. "Please, don't call the cops. We're sorry. We didn't know." "No." Raina said. "You didn't." She pulled her phone. Not for 911, for someone she hadn't called in half a year. Zeke's voice cracked. "Who? Are you calling?" She didn't answer. Just let it ring. Cole came the voice. "Detective Maris, I've got 4 suspects restrained in Ironvale Park. I need full workups. This wasn't random. Why do you think that?" She glanced at Tank's neck and froze. A tattoo, black ink, faded triangle coiled by a winged dagger. She snapped a photo, sent it. "Because they knew my route, my time. They've been watching me." Silence. Then Maris's voice dropped. "That mark. It's not just a merc unit. That's Black Hollow Division, defense leaks, failed operations, real ghost-level stuff. And if they're here for me..." He didn't need to answer. She already knew. "First, you assumed I was helpless." She took a step forward. "Second, you assumed I was alone." Her stance widened. "And third," she smiled slightly, "you assumed I was afraid." A jogger 200 yards away would later describe what happened next as like watching a hurricane dressed for cardio. 12 seconds of hell. Raina moved elbow to Trey's ribs drop. Mason lunged counter. Tree slam. 4 seconds. Tank reached for something. Didn't matter. Knee, wrist strike. Weapon gone. 8 seconds. Knife drawn. Too slow. She faked high, dropped low sweep, crack, steel met bone, tank collapsed, 12 seconds, one truth, they picked the wrong woman. 20 minutes later, Ironvale Park no longer resembled a park at all. FBI agents, state-level intelligence officers, and a few unmarked individuals in civilian clothes who moved like they weren't used to being seen in daylight. Yellow tape cut across walking trails. Drones buzzed above the tree canopy. Raina Cole sat on a bench, still in her sweat-drenched running gear, giving her statement to a woman who hadn't blinked once since they met. Agent Sloan, the woman had said, flashing credentials too clean to be local. Federal counterintelligence. "You're certain they knew your routine?" she asked again, pen hovering over a small black notebook. "Positive," Raina replied, her voice steady. The leader said this was their territory, but the ambush was too well timed. They knew exactly where I'd be, and when. Sloan jotted something down, then looked up. "Miss Cole, I need to ask about your military service, specifically Operation Ember Lance." The words hit like a cold wind to the chest. Raina's jaw tightened. "That's classified. Not anymore. 3 weeks ago, we arrested a Pentagon contract officer named Lucien Calderon, charges selling mission intelligence to foreign operatives. Your name came up during the interrogation." Raina's eyes flicked toward the van where Mason and Trey the twins were being loaded into separate vehicles. The puzzle was snapping together, fast. Mason and Trey Calderon. She said slowly, "His nephews." Sloan nodded grimly. "When we brought Lucien in, certain parties panicked. You resurfacing, that made you a liability. So they sent family to finish what Lucien started, to kill me." Raina asked. Her tone wasn't surprised, just disappointed. "We're still determining intent, but let's be clear, this network isn't small. Calderon was part of something much bigger. You're a threat to it." Raina gave a short, mirthless laugh. "Agent Sloan, with all due respect, I just dismantled 4 of their operatives in under 12 seconds. I think they've already learned I'm not the easiest target." "Maybe so," Sloan said, "but they've got resources. Black Hollow Division doesn't operate like a street gang. You expose their weakness. That makes you a priority." Before Raina could reply, Sloan's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, hung up. "Lucien Calderon's dead," she said, "found in his holding cell. 30 minutes ago, ruled a suicide." Raina stood slowly, blood cooling to ice. "They were cleaning house. They were afraid. Agent Sloan, when they forced me out, they told me the safest option was silence." Raina said, "But if these people want to bring the war back to my doorstep, then they've clearly forgotten who I am." That night, in her apartment above East Line Square, Raina poured a glass of wine and stared down at Ironvale Park through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Peaceful, serene, a lie. Her phone had rung all day, Sloan. Maris. Even someone claiming to be from Apex Command. Everyone wanted to know what she'd do next. But Raina already knew. She opened her laptop, typed a message to her client's indefinite leave from all consulting operations. Then she opened a secure app she hadn't touched in over a year. Message to Phoenix. "The nest has been disturbed. Time to fly again." The reply came almost instantly. "Knew you wouldn't stay grounded forever. Doors still open." Phoenix was Commander Rice Mitchell, her former CO, one of the few who hadn't abandoned her after Ember Lance collapsed. He'd built his own private task force now, one that handled the kinds of cases no one else would touch. She walked to her closet. Behind the suits and silk blouses was a locked metal case, inside gear, encrypted drives, a field med kit, and the flash drive. All the evidence they told her to forget. Raina held it up to the light and smiled. They hadn't silenced her. They'd reactivated her. In her place stood someone the network should have left buried, not a consultant, not a victim, but Raina Cole, shadow-trained operative, war-tested survivor, and a woman with nothing left to lose, and everything to expose. This time, she wasn't alone. 3 months later, She stood at the same bend in Ironvale Park, the one where 4 men had made a fatal mistake. But now, she wasn't scanning for threats. She was waiting for a report. Behind her, members of Phantom Arc moved silently ex-intel, cyber ops, extraction specialists, every one of them handpicked by Commander Rice Mitchell, and every one of them with a score to settle. The truth was uglier than anyone had imagined. The Black Hollow Division hadn't been a rogue cell. It had been a nexus contractors, compromised officials, and international actors profiteering off manipulated conflict zones for over a decade. They thought one woman couldn't matter. That one ghost from a buried operation wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. Agent Sloan approached from the path, a thick folder under her arm. 16 arrests, 4 countries, dozens of assets frozen, 5 major contracts dismantled. This, she held up the file, is enough to fuel prosecution for years. Raina didn't smile. Not yet. And Tank's crew, she asked, cooperating. Sloan nodded. Turns out they weren't the first team sent. Just the first dumb enough to try direct contact. That earned a smirk from Raina. They definitely picked the wrong Jogger. As they walked beneath the canopy of fading autumn leaves, Raina let the silence settle. They had tried to erase her, rewrite her life in redacted files and buried missions, but they'd only cleared the space for her to rise again. And sometimes, she thought, the most dangerous person in the war room is the one they tried to forget. Morning joggers trickled back onto the trail, earbuds in, coffee cups in hand, unaware that the path they ran had been made safer by a woman who refused to stay silent. Raina Cole, once erased, now unstoppable. She resumed her run calm, focused, relentless, and behind her, justice followed. Because sometimes the best way to deal with a threat is to let it come to you and show it exactly why that was a mistake.